don't know if any of you guys have been following my series on Apollo, but for those of you that don't know, Apollo is an XL American bully, and he's here for extreme reactivity and aggression. So far, I've shown you how I earned the trust of such a territorial dog, how I've gained control of him through his obedience training, and finally, how I've been able to proof these commands and teach him about corrections through e-collar training. Now that Apollo has all of his fundamentals in place, I can use his obedience skills and his e-collar training to start tackling the reactivity. Like I said before, Apollo isn't just reactive to one singular thing. He is reactive to basically anything that he perceives as weaker than him, or anything that may be a threat to him or his people. It could be dogs, cats, humans, cars, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But like with all reactivity, there are gonna be situations that are gonna be easier or more difficult for the dog to handle. The first place I'm gonna start is with another dog from my kennel, one of my dogs, who he's already familiar with and behind a barrier. Captain is another intact male, which should provide a pretty good stimulus, but the barrier and the fact that the dog is not a complete stranger should dilute the stimulus and also make the whole thing a lot safer. I'm not really looking for a huge amount of progress in this very first session. I really just want to see if we can prevent or diffuse a reaction once it starts. In other words, I want to make sure that all the tools that I've put in place so far are not only functional in theory, but also in a controlled real-world application. Well, I'd say that that first little experiment went really well, and based on that interaction, I'm ready to go to the park and turn up the heat. There's one specific area at this park that has a big open field right next to a heavily traveled path. But first, I have to make it there. I have really great control of Apollo. He's healing really well in this new environment, and it's looking like things are going pretty well. Until the unexpected happens. A guy walks by with his Rottweiler, and I have not yet made it to a location where I can actually create some distance. And this is what happens. My e-collar was completely useless, so all I could really do is stay calm and wait for them to pass by. I was reminded in that moment why these dogs are so different from every other dog out there. There are very few dogs on this planet that will continue trying to fight under the level of e-collar pressure that I was applying in that moment. And to understand why these bully breeds are this way, I think we need to do a brief history lesson. The original pit bull was bred in the early 1800s for the sport of bull baiting, a horrendous blood sport where powerful dogs are used to pin and kill bulls in a pit-like arena, hence the name pit bull. But by 1835, the Cruelty to Animals Act outlawed this practice in all of England. Dogfighting took its place as an equally cruel sport, but much easier to hide from authorities and much cheaper to compete in. The bull and terrier, as they were called at the time, became the most popular fighting dog due to their short, strong build and their powerful bite. These dogs were bred in the tens of thousands, and there was only two things that breeders cared about at the time: gameness and human sociability. Gameness is defined as the quality of a dog who refuses to quit fighting or working despite injury, fatigue, or overwhelming odds. Human sociability, on the other hand, is defined as a dog's tendency to seek out, enjoy, and be comfortable around human interaction. Fighting dogs had to have both of these traits. And due to the cruel and cold nature of the dogfighting culture as a whole, any dog who was willing to quit on a fight or show any aggression whatsoever to humans was immediately killed. As disgusting as this is, it did serve the purpose of creating a very tight behavioral profile for the bull and terrier. Every modern bully breed is a descendant of this dog, and we still see some of these deeply ingrained behavioral patterns to this day. The complex interaction between these two traits are what makes these dogs the most loved and the most hated all at the same time. So how does any of this apply to Apollo's training? What you are seeing in this clip are the remnants of a time when fighting to the death was the only option for these dogs. Once he is set off, there is nothing in the world that can stop him aside from death. It's bred into him. What this means is I'm gonna have to be a lot more proactive with my approach to actually start diffusing this reactivity. By delivering a much lower level correction before the reaction, and then rewarding engagement with me afterwards, I am actively teaching Apollo to disengage with triggers and instead engage with me. This changed everything, and before I knew it, Apollo wouldn't even look at the other dog or the handler. And at this point I knew that we were actually going to be able to manage his behavior. It really all came down to understanding the history of this breed and their genetics, and applying that to make changes to my training in real time. You see, most dogs could be redirected with some high value food reward or even a low level correction for breaking the heel command. But for Apollo, the answer wasn't higher value food or more pressure. It was simply applying both of these concepts, but much more proactively than my approach was before. I can now use a much lower level stim to achieve even better results than before. And honestly, that's what balanced training is all about. Now it's time to turn it up a notch. Back at the house, I had a friend hide around the corner when I went to take Apollo out for his midday potty break. Strange men in Apollo's space is definitely his biggest trigger. Unfortunately, I couldn't really film the whole setup, but I can show you the results. When my friend finally showed himself, Apollo didn't react or get aggressive in any way. He immediately turned to check in with me and then continued to check in with me throughout the entire interaction. I have successfully rewired his brain to focus on his handler instead of on his triggers. With all this success, I honestly wanted to push my luck a little bit. So I decided I was going to take Apollo to Home Depot. I am fully aware that this is a risky move, so I definitely took my time before going inside. Being in an enclosed area, tight aisles with tons of people, is definitely a different situation than being outside at the park or having one guy in the yard at home. It's definitely a big step up. I was really going off of a gut feeling when I decided to make this trip, but luckily for me, what I saw was a completely different dog than the one I met 3 weeks ago. It really only took a couple of subtle redirects on the e-collar to get him in the zone, and Apollo was completely comfortable and normal around all of those strangers. Apollo is finally ready to go home where I can transfer all of these skills over to his owner and they can practice them for the rest of his life. This dog went from completely aggressive and reactive to manageable and sweet in just 3 weeks. If you guys want to see more videos like this one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you want to learn more about the history of pit bulls, stay on the lookout because I'm going to be doing a full documentary style video taking you from the very beginning to the somewhat horrible situation that we're in today and how exactly we got here. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.